Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your producers of ScareLA 2014.
Is there any monsters in the house?
All right, we're waiting for you guys. Are you ready? All right. Thank you so much for being here at ScareLA. We're thrilled to have you. This is our second year. It's bigger, better, and badder. Make sure you check out the second floor. Make sure you run the entire floor. Make sure you scare the heck out of everybody else here. And now I'm passing on to Rick, who's going to introduce our guests and attendants.
All right. Universal Studios Hollywood's in the house! I said you're in the house! Are you guys having a great time so far? This is about to get a hell of a lot better? Who wants to hear about mazes? Who wants to hear about monsters? Who wants the badass secret reveal? Then we're going to shut up and get out of the way and let the true masters come up. Have a great time, ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to take a ride on the terror tram to the dark side of Hollywood. ScareLA is proud to present Halloween Horror Nights from Universal Studios Hollywood. Please give a warm welcome to the man behind the menace, Chris Williams, art director. And Murdy, creative director and executive producer.
Good afternoon. How you guys doing? Well, first of all, I'm John Murdy, creative director, producer of Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios Hollywood.
And I'm Chris Williams, art director, production designer of Universal Studios Halloween Horror Nights, and thank you guys for coming out.
Chris and I brought Halloween Horror Nights back to Hollywood in 2006, and every year since then we've created the event together. So we are always extremely grateful to the fans of this event for supporting it year after year after year. Without you guys, frankly, we wouldn't have a job, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
I know you guys came here today also because we're going to make a big announcement.
Yeah.
You guys ready for a big announcement? How about we announce the next maze here live on stage here at Scare Los Angeles? All right, let's roll the video. An American Werewolf in London is finally coming to Halloween Horror Nights. Chris and I have been wanting to do this particular maze, well, since we were in junior high school, basically. We are absolutely thrilled to be doing An American Werewolf in London, and we're particularly thrilled today because as a special treat for all of you, we have a very special guest with us today. He's a legend in Hollywood. Please give a warm round of applause for the writer, director, and producer of An American Werewolf in London, Mr. John Landis.
Thank you.
You're the best!
My mom's here.
So I thought how we'd start this off is, since we have John with us here particularly, I wanted to ask him a few questions about making An American Werewolf in London, and then once we do that, we're going to show you a few sneak peeks of what we're building over at Universal Studios Hollywood. So, the story of how this movie came to be is actually a pretty awesome one, and quite like a horror film, John. I understand it goes all the way back to 1969. Would you share with everybody how American Werewolf in London, the movie, came to be?
You know, the problem with doing publicity and stuff for movies, especially a movie this old, how many of you guys already know the story? I feel like such a schmuck because I didn't know. Basically, I worked as a, what's now called a production assistant, then they were called gophers or schleppers, on a movie called Kelly's Heroes, which was shot in Yugoslavia, the former Yugoslavia. So in 1969, I'm behind the Iron Curtain. That actually meant something. It's different now, but anyway. And in all of Yugoslavia at that time, Tito was alive and well, and big hammer and sickles everywhere. It was very kind of amazing because it was like World War II had just happened. There were maybe 2,000 cars in the country at that time, and Kelly's Heroes probably had 300 of them. It was a big World War II movie with Clint Eastwood. You ever see it? Very strong. Yeah. And I was being driven by a guy named Sasha, by a Yugoslav named Sasha, who was a very educated guy, spoke 3 or 4 languages, and he was probably in his 30s, and I was 18. And we were driving from Novi Sad, or from Belgrade to Novi Sad, or from Novi, I don't know where the fuck we were, somewhere. And we were driving, and there was just this one road lined by trees, not 2 lanes wide. It was just one road, and it was straight for 600, 700 miles. And we're on this road, and we come to a stop. It's like, what's up? And there was like 2 hay wagons and a tractor in front of us, and it was like, stopped. And Sasha got out of the car to go see what's going on. And it was at a crossroads. There was a dirt road that came, a fairly busy dirt road that came, so it was in what's called the crux of a crossroads, right there. And there were about 20 people, mostly gypsies. And the gypsies, they're now called Roma. It's, they're being persecuted, as they've always been. And the gypsies at that time in '69, I was very taken aback because they really did look like extras. They were dressed just like the Wolfman. You know, they had babushkas, and you know, they really looked like wardrobe. And there was a Greek Orthodox priest, actually 2. Those are guys with big tall hats and big beards. They had this incense thing going, and I'm like, what's going on? And Sasha went and talked to them, and they came back. They had dug a hole in the crux of the crossroad. It was interesting because it wasn't that wide. It was about 3 feet wide. It was about 8 feet deep. And lying there in the road was a dead person who had been wrapped in a shroud. It was wrapped in canvas, and the shroud was wrapped, it was garlanded by rosaries and garlands of garlic cloves. It was really like, what's going on, folks? And Sasha asked them, and he came back, and they're going, hey, all this shit. And he was laughing. He thought it was really funny. And I said, what's up? And this guy, the dead guy, had been killed he had been killed doing some crime, and I don't remember. I don't know what it was.
It was Yugoslavia in the Cold War, you know.
No, I really don't know. He had done something really bad, and he was killed doing it. And they were burying his body. By the way, they put him in feet first, standing like that. Burying his body at the crux of a crossroad with all this stuff, so that he would not get up and cause trouble, essentially. And Sasha thought this was really funny, and made jokes about these peasants, these gypsies. And I thought, really? I mean, this was like 2 weeks before, a man had landed on the moon. And these guys are talking about zombies, you know, it was like... And so that was the inspiration. I turned 19 there on that movie. And I wrote the script for An American Werewolf in London then. And it took place in London. The truth is, I did all this, you know... Basically, I wanted to make a fantasy film that dealt with a supernatural premise and dealt with it as realistically as I could. And I ended up with werewolves, mainly because ghosts, werewolves, and what are now called zombies, Walking Dead, are the only three monsters, supernatural creatures, that are completely international in all cultures, everywhere in the world. So I thought, okay. So in all this stuff, you make it up mostly. Kurt Sielman made up a great deal of what you think is traditional lore about werewolves. Kurt made it up in Hollywood. Or like Bram Stoker, who created 50% of what we think is real shit about vampires. But what's fascinating was that it was in London for two reasons. One, Yankee King Arthur's Court, but two, because of what was then called the Eady system, Lord Eady, a British quota system, where if you made a British film and qualified, you got money from the government. So that was my plan. So I wrote this script, I was very pleased with it, and that was 1969. The movie was made in 1981. And what happened was, I came back eventually. I was in Europe a while, I was working on movies, and then I came back and worked on movies, and then I would try to get people to, hey, let's make this movie. And they would read it, and I always got the same response. Either, or either, depending. They would say, this is too funny to be scary, or this is too scary to be funny. And so I go, well, it's a horror film, and they go, but it's funny. Get the fuck out of my office.
Even after Animal House and Blues.
Well, what happened was, I mean, as my career went along, I was very lucky. I made two things out of it. First movie I made, Schlock, which is terrible, by the way. But what's interesting, I was 21, and I met this really amazingly gifted 20-year-old named Rick Baker. And he did the makeup on Schlock. And I gave him the script of American Werewolf then, in 1971. I said, here, figure this out. Because it's written in the script exactly what happens. The metamorphosis is in bright light. And I wrote it so I didn't want cutaways. I just made it impossible for a makeup guy. And in fact, there's a cut to Mickey Mouse in this. That was supposed to, I just thought it was funny. I think that didn't have to be there. But, so I said, figure this out. So we had a long time to think about it, because no one would give me the money. And then eventually I made Kentucky Fried Movie, and then I made Animal House, and made the Blues Brothers, and these pictures made a lot of money, and it's called the movie business. So I said, okay, I want to make this now. And it was what's called a negative pickup, which is the best way to make movies, and unfortunately it's not done anymore. But, where you basically make a deal with the distributor film company, and they say, when you give us a finished film based on this material, and there's all these things, it has to be in color, it has to be at least this long, and no longer than this, has to have an R rating, can't have an X rating, and all this stuff. When you give us this film, we'll give you, in this case, $10 million. So with that little piece of paper, you go to a bank and borrow the money. So the bad part is it puts the risk entirely on the filmmakers. The good part is that means you have total control. It was the easiest movie I ever made. I signed the checks. It was a great experience. Anyway.
You mentioned that one of the things that was a hard sell with American Werewolf in London is that people would read the script and they would see the comedy that was in the script and have a disconnect with it being a horror movie. So how do you view the film, though? We've talked about this a lot, and a lot of people would call it a horror comedy, but...
Yeah, I don't think it's a comedy. I call it a horror film. It happens to be funny. It's meant to be funny. But a horror comedy like Abbott and Costello Frankenstein or Scream or something, then the they're not horror films, you know? I mean, the Abbott Stone Frankenstein, which I love, is an Abbott Costello movie. And the Heavens of the Monsters. But it's that the monsters treated with respect, actually, which is unusual. But that's not a horror film, and that's a comedy. An American Werewolf, I'm fascinated by people who think they call it a comedy because it's so grim. It's such a grim story. I mean, you meet these boys in a truckload of sheep. Where do they go? The slaughtered lamb. You know, it's not a happy story. It doesn't turn out well. They're dead. They're dead from the first frame. And I remember my wife, who designed the costumes for this and most of my films, she said at the time, she read the script. She won't read a script unless we're in production. Then she'll read it. You know. But she read it. She said, "John, you put the B in subtle." So, did you make that up? She did. Anyway. No, I personally think it's the comedy, for me, was a way to enhance the horror. Makes it scarier. Because these two boys react the way I believe an educated and rather sophisticated person would react. These things don't exist. It's like John Carpenter's quote, "Monsters don't scare me, people scare me." You know, but, so that's why it's funny.
And I'm going to let Chris talk a little bit about one of the things that American Werewolf in London is so famous for, and you mentioned it already, John.
Yeah, this is a great pick, actually. Who John mentioned earlier, Rick Baker, he's sculpting on one of the stormtrooper demons that actually are in the show, in the film. So your collaboration with Rick, you've collaborated with him on other films as well, and can you talk maybe about your collaboration on this production?
Sure, when I met Rick, I'll never forget, I was with Jim O'Rourke. When I wrote Schlock, I saw him, did you ever see Trog? Joe Crawford, last picture, Trog. It's really, Freddie Francis, you really should see it. It's one of those movies that's so terrible that it depends on your mood. It can be really funny or depressing, but it's terrific. And you know what it is? It's one of the armatures from 2001 that Stuart Freeborn made. But it's just the guy wearing the mask, kind of a fat wrestler. He's wearing the mask and then he's wearing like a fur bathing suit and little fur booties. He's charmed. It's really funny. Anyway, so I wrote Schlock, and the joke was originally Schlock was meant to be just a stupid gorilla suit. It was not meant, you know, it was supposed to be tacky. And I went to, when I was in Melbourne at Fox, it's a long story, I knew John Chambers. John Chambers is a great makeup artist who won an honorary Oscar for Planet of the Apes. He devised the first kind of mass prosthetic thing with foam. Yeah, so you could, the innovation was, it was a makeup. Prosthetics have been used in silence, but you look at, like in The Wizard of Oz, those were heavy rubber and complicated, and Charlie Schramm, I mean, they're brilliant, but you couldn't have 300 of them. You know? So John developed the makeup, and anyway, so I knew him pretty well, and in fact, he plays the National Guard captain in Schlock. And did anyone see Argo? Because John Goodman's playing John Chambers. Physically very well, nothing else. And I knew all about John's work for the CIA and the FBI at the time when I was available. It was very cool. Anyway, so I went to John and I said, "John, I need a gorilla suit." And this is 1970, I'm 21. And I said, you know, he says, "Oh yeah, we could do that. $200,000.
Wasn't it the budget of Schlock?
The budget of Schlock was $60,000. So I went, well, and then I thought, well, maybe I can rent a suit and talk to Bob Burns. And anyway, so I then went, I was told to go to Don. Do you remember Don Post mask? It was full, they used to sell them in the back of the famous monsters.
My grandmother used to scare me with one of those every day when I came home from school. Thanks for re-traumatizing me.
You're welcome. Anyway, Don Post Studios were in Burbank, and they made those rubber masks. So I thought, okay, John said, go over there. So I go to Don Post, and basically he says, yeah, I could make a bad gorilla suit, be about $100,000. So it's getting less. So I'm on my way out, and Don Post Jr., who I hope is still alive, he was young then, he's painting a mask, a Tor Johnson mask, I remember, he's painting. And he's like, what kind of this? Hey, I come over here and I said, yeah, there was a kid in here yesterday who's really talented, you should see. Look, here's his card. And there was this business card, Rick Baker, Monster Maker. And it had a phone number with an area code, like, I don't know what it was, but it was in LA. I thought, what the hell? So I called, and Rick lived in Glendale. No, he didn't. I'm totally wrong. He lived in Covina. Sorry. And it's I've learned, never say there's like a north or a west.
West Covina.
West
Covina. High school there.
Yeah, Rick did not live in West Covina. He lived in Covina. It's very good. So I grew up in Westwood. You know, I'm an LA kid. So, Covina, where the fuck is Covina? So, Jim O'Rourke and I, he was living with his parents, Ralph and Doris, lovely people, and Jim O'Rourke and I drive out to Covina. You know, it's like, for me, it's like Kansas City. We drive out to Covina, and it was a little, lower middle class neighborhood, little box homes, and we go, and is Ricky home? And Rick talks about it now. He says that it was like meeting aliens because he'd never met. Rick said I was the first one he ever met that said the F word. Of course, I said
probably wasn't the last.
What? But he said I was like an alien. Anyway, but that's what I had long hair too. Anyway, so we go into their house and we go into Ricky's room, and he was 20. And he had finished high school and stuff, and corresponded with Dick Smith for a long time. And he was about to work on a movie called Little Big Man. He was assisting Dick on The Exorcist right after that. But anyway, I looked at, he's a kid interested in makeup, so we've been doing it since he was 10, 11. And I'm looking at these masks and maquettes. Like I said to Jim, kid's fucking brilliant. I mean, he was so ahead. I mean, I'd worked professionally in the movies since the middle of Fox. By that time, six years, and worked a lot. And it was like, holy shit, this kid is amazing. So Rick's budget on schlock was $2,000, and I was the monster. So all the molds, everything had to be the size that could fit in his mom's oven. And Doris complained for years that her blueberry pie smelled like foam rubber. But anyway, so Rick and I, he had a long time, because I said I want to see I figured it would hurt. If that's going to happen to it, it would hurt. And I wanted to see I wanted to see what we did. And he figured out change-o heads and everything over the time. And meanwhile, Rick's getting more and more successful. He did Octoman, and then It's Alive, I remember. Killer Fate. Yeah, so Rick's working away. Incredible two-headed train spring. It's a two-headed gorilla. It's a long story, but I ended up getting the job of King Kong, which he still hasn't forgiven me for.
The 1976 King Kong.
He is King Kong. Anyway, so the end result was, I kept telling him I'm going to make this movie. He kept going, okay, because I figured it out. Finally, I make the deal, get the money. I hadn't talked to Rick in a year and a half. Call him up. Rick, we're making An American Werewolf. I'll never, he goes, uh-oh. What do you mean, uh-oh? Well, I'm kind of making the werewolf movie. What? Joe Dante hired me to do this movie, The Howling. Did you show him the change? Rick's assistant, by the way, was a really brilliant kid named Rob O'Team. Anyway, I said, did you show him the change-o heads? Yeah. You fucker, I was so... Anyway, the way it worked out was that Rick left The Howling and his assistant, Rob O'Team, who did the thing in many great Rob is brilliant. So they went on, then Rick came with me and did
Well, you mentioned it, but obviously, Chris and I, when we were in junior high, I was in junior high when I saw American Werewolf for the first time, and I'll never forget being in the movie theater and seeing the transformation scene. And Chris...
Yeah, very iconic. Hugely iconic. This is like one of the most iconic scenes of truly of all of horror. And it, personally for me, definitely huge. very impactful on my life. It's one of the things of why I'm sitting here today and what I do today is because of...
I'm sorry.
It's all his fault.
I didn't have the artistic talent, so I got Dick Smith's horror makeup kit, played around with it, and realized I couldn't be a makeup artist, but he's the artist.
But this is such a cool, huge scene. Can you talk about more of the vision of that?
Well, it was meant to be what it is. It's, you know, I just see the flaws in it now, and we do it a little different now. But the idea was to see the change without doing lap dissolves. Traditionally, the way it was done with Lon Chaney Jr., for instance, was that they would, you know, be put in a position. Yeah, they actually used to pin him to the chair, or the pillow. The best one's on a pillow, but the pillow was made of plaster of Paris. Yes, so it wouldn't move. So it wouldn't move. Anyway, and it took a whole day, you know, because Jack Pierce would lay on this hair and pieces, and then they'd shoot some, and then lay more on, and they'd shoot. It took forever. But it always bothered me in the movies that it was always kind of gentle. It sort of happened. And I thought it would hurt, you know. And I wanted to see his skull and his spine stretch and crack. So Rick, you know, I mean, Rick's brilliant, and all he asked for this in 1971. He said, if we do this, you got to give me the actors 6 months before the movie. And I remember, I actually hired Griffin Dunn and David Naughton without having my deal yet. So it was scary. So Rick could make the mold and work on it. And when we were in London, he brought over all these kids with him, you know, Steve Johnson, and they're all great makeup artists, they're all big guys now. When we were in London, we scheduled it so the last week of shooting was the Metamorphosis. And that way we got rid of a lot of the crew, and we had the set of Jenny's apartment, you know, it was built like the Muppets, you know, it was built up off the ground so he could be under it, the puppeteers could work under it. And the way it worked was we scheduled it for the last 5 days of shooting. David McCord, David Naughton, and Rick Baker, and these guys would show up for work at 2 or 3 in the morning and start a makeup process, and we'd show up at 7, and we'd be, you know, ready to shoot by 9:30, and we'd shoot the pieces, and then we'd sit around and bullshit while they went off and worked another 4 hours. We would get 3 or 4 shots a day if we were lucky. But what was interesting about it was Rick Baker, the first time we did one of the change-o heads where you see it moving, it's action, got it. Okay, great. Rick goes, you're not going to do it again? I said, does it do anything else? He said, no. No, we're not going to do it again. Hurry up, get the fuck out of here, go work. And it was so interesting.
It broke his heart.
He said, we've been working on this for 6 months. I said, well, what else? We did it. What else is it supposed to do? He was just devastated. And it was so funny. And then David Naughton, I remember one of the things, he goes, I've been sitting here for 8 hours. And you go, that's it? Yeah, we got it, you know. Anyway, it took a week, and then we finished. And it was very exciting when the movie finally opened, because people really were. At that time, it was this, you know, this is followed a year and a half later by The Thing, like Extraordinary, the John Carpenter movie, where Rock took us to, you know, even another level. And then, you know, Dick Smith, what he did, that was so extraordinary. I mean, I wish he had done it before Coming to America, but Dick invented silicone. You know, now you can do appliances that are seamless and don't have that rubbery, you know. I mean, with silicones and these new plastics, have you seen, I haven't seen it, but Maleficent? Yeah. What Rick did to Angelina's amazing. Angelina, did you see her face? She's wearing pieces, you can't tell, except that people's faces don't do that, but it's an amazing thing. He's brilliant, and it was very successful, and it did inspire a lot of people. And I meet people all over the world who talk about that they became makeup artists or directors or whatever because of this movie. Except in England. In England, whenever you talk to boys, it's always about Jenny in the shower. I saw that when I was 12, changed my life.
But being 1981 and being in the movie theater, you remember, Chris? I mean, I think I snuck in, because I don't think I was of age to be allowed to see it, but watching that scene take place was a life-changing experience for so many people, not only in movies, but in the haunt industry, the makeup artists. It was just, how is this possible? You would sit there in just awe. And, these days, we all, a lot of you guys grew up in the era of computer animation. You have to think about how you physically did this before there was computer animation.
I think it was huge on the film industry as well, because the Academy created
that was
a category.
It was so impressive that the Academy created the Makeup Academy. Yes, I think Rick has 7?
Yes, 7, yeah.
7 Oscars. That whole shit.
But, people, we mentioned Jack Pierce, who did all the classic Universal monster characters, and Lon Chaney.
When you look at what Jack Pierce and Lon Chaney did, they were using
Out of the kid.
mortician's wax and putty. I still don't think they're going to make us as good as Lon Chaney's. They're amazing.
But those guys never got recognized, by the Academy. There was, they would do honorary Academy Awards.
Bill Tuttle got an honorary Oscar
For Dr. Lowe?
Yeah, 7 Places to Dr. Lowe. And, it's Bill Tuttle.
It's Bill Tuttle right now. Let's take this call.
Just a moment.
Can I call you back? Everybody say, hi, Bill. Hi, Bill. I'll call you back.
And Dick eventually got one as an honorary Oscar for all his work.
But Dick Smith was,
just passed away.
Dick Smith just passed away. You know what he did that was amazing, Dick Smith? Aside, you know him, The Exorcist, The Godfather, Amadeus, Little Big Man. But the thing that Dick Smith did that was so remarkable, makeup artists always kept secrets. It was always like proprietary. They didn't want you to know how it was done. And so the union had a lot to do with jobs. And Dick Smith, from the beginning, people would write to him and say, how did you do that? And he'd go, oh, well, this is how I did it. And he was totally generous.
He wrote a book.
He wrote a book about how to do makeup for kids, how to do things. Totally open, and there's so many makeup artists. Tom Savini from Pittsburgh, and Ricky Baker, and many guys who Dick Smith was totally open. He really changed the field. He was amazing.
Yeah, I actually had a Dick Smith monster makeup kit.
I did too.
At like 12. Yeah.
I had the book too.
Best Christmas gift I ever received, actually.
You were probably way better at it than I was. Everything I did looked like Phyllis Diller. So what we wanted to do now is give you guys a little sneak peek at what you can expect to see this September and October at Halloween Horror Nights, because we are in the middle of creating An American Werewolf in London. And before I share any pictures or do any of that, I think we do need to give credit to our sister park in Orlando, particularly Mike Aiello, the creative director, who hooked us up with John and who did excellent.
We did one last year for the first time in Orlando, and it was an amazing experience for me. I told John, I told these guys, they paid me, to get the rights and stuff, and I'm supposed to be a consultant, and so I had all these ideas, like how cool is this? And I wrote out all this stuff about how to scare, oh wow. And I sat down, I fly over at my first meeting. Okay, now remember, you have to get at least 4,500 people through an hour. I was like, okay, fuck this shit.
We're doing 2,000, sorry.
But I have to tell you, it was a good experience in Orlando. It really was. Did you see those pieces of people getting scared by shit?
Yeah, that's all footage from Orlando.
That's all footage from Orlando. What was amazing, too, was I didn't realize people fall down.
Oh, yeah. They crawl, they weep,
Also, they get into so much trouble. And here, they're even more elaborate. Here they're doing, Orlando, they have the puppets and masks. Here he's doing prosthetic makeups on these guys.
We can show you some of that.
I was going to say, so, and they go to great detail. The copies, let's show you some of the copies. You know, and I hope it's as, I mean, they're building it now, but the sound was fantastic in Orlando. They got all they went to London, went to Twickenham, and got all the original tracks. And
well, thank you for doing the Blu-ray, because I've looked into this before, and the sound department was like, you want what? Like a few years ago, I started asking questions about it. Once you guys did the Blu-ray, then we had all the original sound restored. It's fantastic.
Well, what was, they did a great job. But what was amazing to me was people wait hours in line. I mean, I was there, like they're waiting in line. And I think it should take 7 to 10 minutes, I would think. And they go in, and then they're like out of there in a minute and a half. Like mowing people down. Bye! And I was like, shit, if I waited in line for 2 hours, I'd look at it.
Well, you guys can look at it. I mean, we worked all year on this. Yeah, let's show. We're going to share a few behind-the-scenes stills. Obviously, this particular attraction is in progress. It's being built as we speak. So let's start with the slaughtered lamb. Obviously, the slaughtered lamb. If you're going to do American Werewolf in London, the slaughtered lamb has to be the facade. And we're building this right now. This is actually a few weeks old. It's probably progressed since the last time I took this picture, but you're going to get to go inside the slaughtered lamb. Chris is our art director and production designer. You can talk a little bit about the challenge of creating this set.
Yeah, this is a couple weeks ago, so we're further along in here actually. But you know, our typical drill and what we do in Hollywood, you know, we're trying to redesign all the sets identical as best as we can for the film. So we're pulling a lot of screen grabs and doing a lot of studying. My set designers and dressers as well are really studying the film to really nail this back in the early 80s. So we're bringing it right back to life with all the details. So you guys are going to love it.
And then, you know, when you talk about American Werewolf in London, you've got to talk about the nightmare sequences. And perhaps my favorite is this one. And you know the scene. You guys have seen the scene in American Werewolf in London.
Who has not seen the movie? Because I'll send you some DVDs.
He's got a whole duffel bag of them in the back. We're gonna...
My favorite thing that happened in Orlando were the people who saw the movie were scared but also excited. Because, oh, yeah, and people didn't see the movie were like, what the fuck? I mean, they really were baffled by some of it. It was like, that really scared me, but why?
This particular nightmare scene is really challenging because, you know, we were joking about it, how many people go through a maze, but when Chris and I work with our actors, the first thing we say, you know, every single year, every single cast, it's a new show every 10 seconds. And that's the cycle you've got to be on, which means for an actor at Halloween Horror Nights, if you're playing this guy or any of the roles, you're going to do that probably 40,000 times. Yeah. It's like running a marathon.
What I did see in Orlando, and it's going to be different here, what I did see was, just like the Jungle Boat ride, it totally depends on the performer. It really doesn't, I mean, all the elaborate work you go to, it's all down to the performer. And so if someone's half-assed or tired or low energy, it makes a difference.
Well, that's why
he has a cattle prod.
It's just like Coney Island in the old days, you know? I have a Wolfman cane, actually. Does a lot more damage than a cattle prod. This particular scene, there we go. So obviously...
That's your set, that's yours?
Oh, yes. Yeah, no, that's my living room. I'm really into the film. I had my interior decorator redesign the whole house. But no, that's the set. We just took a picture of the set. It's in progress right now. But to get that effect of those soldiers coming in and shooting the place up is something that, you know, in a movie you only have to get it right for the camera once. In our world, as I mentioned before, we have to do it 40,000 times through the course of the event. So this is a whole combined lighting audio sequence with performers. So when they come into the room, you can maybe see, if you see the little pieces of blue tape that are up on the set there and they kind of go down the wall. You marked all those. Tell them what the blue tape is for.
Those are bullet hits, actually, from the soldiers' machine guns.
So how this all works is all designed to be a programmed audio lighting sequence. So all four of these guys, when they come into the room and they start shooting up the place and their guns are going to flash and everything, you're going to see the bullet hits go throughout the room. Or we'll use real machine guns. We haven't decided. That would be scary. And of course, another one of my favorite scenes is the subway station. And you had when we met, John, you had a very specific note for Chris. And if you look at the picture, you wanted it to feel like you were in the subway. You wanted that curved ceiling.
Yes, and what we created that going into the subway, actually. We've got curved ceilings going through that set.
And since we're in the subway, we had to do... I feel like I'm playing a video game.
Yeah.
We figured we might as well build a subway car. You can talk about this.
Yeah, so we've got, this is all fabricated out of wood. It's been what's called computer cut, actually. We have a computer that actually cuts this. It's a specialized wood as well. So we can really completely nail and recreate something very realistic.
Now we're going to talk about the makeup a little bit. So again, we're going to show you a few things that are in progress. Poor Jack. Poor Jack as he goes through the film. You know, he gets, right out of the gate, he gets mauled to death by a werewolf, but then he slowly starts to disintegrate every time you see him. And what was your, by the way, you wrote the script, what was your inspiration for that?
I just made it up. I just thought if you're dead, then you're the undead.
And every time you come back, you get a little bit more.
He's not refrigerated.
So you mentioned that we use prosthetic makeup at Halloween Horror Nights, so that's how we do that.
One of the big differences between Orlando and here was in Orlando they did mass sculpting, very lavish stuff. I can't get here. They're actually having actors in prosthetic makeup. They're showing. Do you have that?
Oh yeah. If I can, there you go.
No, go further. Go to this.
Go past Jack 1? Okay.
Yeah.
Go to Jack 2.
No, to the clay sculpture. Didn't you have a slide with them sculpting the head?
Oh, I have the two prosthetic makeups for Jack and then the silicone slit.
Well, show me the thing with the clay. Go forward, see, because
we're going to go past all of the makeup.
I thought I saw. Well, no, it's just. Oh, so this is stage.
This is stage 2, Jack. This is after he's come back the second time and his skin's all green.
Yeah.
But
just how long does it take to apply this? Because they have to not only glue it on, but blend it.
Yes, it's pre-painted actually, so we've got about 30 minutes to an application actually.
Well, that's
so you can see where we're taking our seams and trying to push them around to create the hairline to help hide some of the seams and to blend it as well.
We pre-paint all the prosthetics with like a base, facial tone, and then it's I call our makeup process the assembly line of gore. It's
How
like
many makeup artists do you use at night?
How many a night?
We've got about 20. 20 doing applied prosthetics actually.
Yeah, so it literally is like Henry Ford, when he invented the assembly line for the Model A.
It's very much like building a car.
It's like an assembly line of gore. Your actor comes in, they get their number, they get in line, they go to the first station, they go to prosthetics.
Imagine showing up for work and like you're really a popcorn guy. What do you do? Well, Universal, get in that line. 20 minutes later, wow!
But we do like 600 actors a night. It's pretty crazy. When we do,
how many performers work on Halloween Horror Night that are hired?
About 600.
600. It's amazing.
Yeah, makeup starts what time, Chris? 2?
Around 2, yes. Yeah.
So between 2 and say half an hour before we open at 6:30, all those people will go through what we call ScareLA, and it's it's literally just
like
hundreds and hundreds of pretty much. only a lot scarier. So then there's stage 3 Jack. There we go. And you remember the scene, he shows up in the movie theater. And this is one we really, I think we probably did, what, 3 or 4 different scopes on this one. And this is when he's completely almost skeletal. Now, Jack's not the only character, obviously, in American Werewolf in London. We talked about the nightmare sequences. This is another one of the famous nightmare sequences. This is Ghoul David. So here's the sculpt for Ghoul David. And then one of the really important elements is contacts, because he's got to have those eyes. And it's actually a really complicated process for us to do contacts. We just can't simply go, here you go, here's your contacts, put them on. Every single performer has to go to an optometrist. They have to get custom fitted.
You use scleral lenses, right? The soft ones. Yeah.
Yes, not
classic. Well, I remember on Thriller and on we had to use the old-fashioned, oh, they were horrible.
Were they glass contacts? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, big full eye.
So how long was he wearing those on set?
Probably 20 minutes, and it would hurt too much. Michael, probably half hour. They're horrible.
So every single performer, they go to the optometrist, they get custom fit, and we have to make them. So it's this whole big, huge
now they don't hurt,
process.
so it's different.
Yeah.
And you can wear them for a long time.
Yeah, they can wear them for 7 hours. And then, of course, you know, we've talked about this scene before in the living room with the nightmare demon soldiers, the stormtroopers. So this obviously is a mask because of the style of the makeup. You also have to do the helmet. And there you go. That's him in progress right now.
Really, I mean, I'm very impressed by how much work and money they put into this stuff. It's very elaborate. The one thing, the only criticism I have, this is for Audrey, but the only criticism I have is when they do publicity for these things, they bring guys with big cameras, with big gun lights and walk through. Have you ever been, you know, a bar or a strip club? You're not supposed to see them in the daytime.
I never thought of that.
You go through this in the dark and it's lit and everything, and they're going through, and I'm going, why? You went to so much trouble. Don't show it like that. But other than that, things are great. But for the guests who go, yeah, it's dark and scary.
Well, it's a really fine line when you're lighting a maze. Chris and I talk about this, you know, we wear many, many different hats, you know, we're all people who came out of theater, and yes, I've got a scary skeleton hat, he's got a gap. But, you know, we do lighting, we do audio, we do makeup, we do all of that stuff, but lighting a maze is an art form unto itself, because you want it dark and scary, but you still want to see and appreciate the movie. So our most common note, Chris, what would you say to our lighting designers is, take it down, take it down, take it down.
It's very directors too. What's interesting in the movie is always, it's like, can you make it darker? Can it be louder? Everyone wants it louder. And that's what, now what's amazing also at Universal is here in LA, they build these mazes and they're, what are they, canvas? Or what are they?
Oh, as far as where they're inside?
Yeah.
They're like tent structures.
But it's health and safety. I mean, they have to be permanent structures. You know, it's all there.
Yeah, you have to do it for an engineer for an earthquake or a hurricane or anything.
It's amazing how lavish. And
giant monsters.
for 7 weeks. It's kind of incredible. It
is crazy because we work on this all year round. We spend, you know, ungodly amounts of hours doing this, and then, you know, we do it for, you know, 22 nights or so, and then it just all gets torn down. And then a couple weeks go by, and then we go, all right, we'll start next year. It's a never-ending cycle of horror.
Who has been to a Universal Halloween horror night? Was it scary? Yeah.
7 years. There you go. Thank you guys, by the way. And then, of course, we got to talk about the werewolf. This is complicated. You can't do this with an actor.
I saw it when I went to do the Blu-ray, which, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. I hadn't seen the movie in like 10 or 11 years. And I started to watch the movie. And it was like, I'd forgotten how gruesome it is. Like,
We made it.
yeah, you know. This poor guy hasn't worked since.
But just in order to do the werewolf, how many different types of werewolves do we have, Chris, in the maze now?
three different ways that we're doing the werewolf gag, actually, but multiples of those three different ways.
And they're very similar to what we did in the movie, too, actually.
Yeah, I mean, well, this is one of the things I think is so cool about what Chris and our makeup effects people do in Halloween Horror Nights. I feel like we are the keepers of the flame of practical makeup effects. You know? Because we grew up watching, Rick Baker was a huge idol of mine, and still to this day is. I know you idolize Baker.
Have you met Rick Baker? No,
Yes, he's a dear friend. But, I mean, we grew up in that era. We grew up watching these practical movie effects before computer animation. And everything we do is that. It's live, practical makeup effects. So the werewolf, I've decided, we're not going to give away too much about the werewolf. I mean, that's the other thing that I kind of hate about the information age. Everything is like, spoiler, 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 spoiler. And you should be surprised, you should be excited, you should be thrilled. And sometimes I think, it's a bad idea to take too much of a peek behind the curtain, show away too much of how we do things. But I will show you what a werewolf looks like in Halloween Horror Nights. There you go.
So that's about 3 feet tall and just about 8 feet long.
8 feet long?
Yeah, so big.
Like he just said, I'm not going to show you, but I will show you.
I want to show you how we're doing it technically. I think
we hire a werewolf.
We'll have to go find your gypsies from Yugoslavia and see if they have a line on that. But, so that's just an example of, some of the things we're creating for An American Werewolf in London. We do want to allow some time for your guys' questions. The one thing I will ask is, we've got John Landis here. He's the writer, director, producer of An American, right here. This is the guy who made the movie. This is an amazing opportunity to ask myself, Chris, Mr. Landis, any question you want. The one thing I do ask is, I've done conventions a lot of times, and I've had a lot of guest hosts, and then the first question you get has nothing to do with anything that we're talking about. Like, what do you mean this made 7 years ago? We'd like to keep all the questions focused on American Werewolf in London, since John was so gracious to come down here today. Give it up for Mr. Landis. And to spend time with you guys, I just think we should all ask questions about this particular maze and our collaboration on it. Okay. So we'll turn it over to Q&A at this point, and if you've got a question.
We have the back there.
Okay.
Ready to back stand up? You got to stand up, you got to push, there you go. Use your outdoor voice. Use your outdoor voice.
Mr. Murdy, Mr. Williams, I was wondering if you guys were going to have any shows here for Halloween Horror Nights.
If there's shows about American Werewolf in London.
No, you can tell. I mean, they do live shows. They do all. Why not? You're here to hype the fucking thing.
What I'll say is we're in the middle of announcement season right now, and today we just, some things are top secret. What I will say is...
The answer is yes, and they're very cool.
Typically when we get to ScareLA, guys, this is usually our last announcement of the season, but all I will say is there is still a major announcement yet to come. Next question.
This is kind of like American Werewolf, but how much of the stuff did you take from American Werewolf to Thriller?
Actually, it was interesting. In An American Werewolf in London, the conception was I mean, it's written in the script, bright light, no cutaways. It's like the worst thing you can do to a makeup guy. So when I did Thriller, it was the exact opposite. It's in the dark. I keep cutting to Ola screaming, so it's like big music, and it's totally different. It's not Sam Cooke, it's Elmer Bernstein with an orchestra. It's very different. But in Thriller, we only used one thing from Werewolf, the hand. When Michael looks like this and the claws come out, it's the same hand painted black.
Yeah, I did not know.
Because Bob Burns Burns has all the original stuff in his house rotting away.
Okay, next question.
Right here.
I went to Halloween Horror Nights in Florida last year, and it was Alex. That was the best house, the whole place.
Cool.
Outstanding.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I was wondering, are you going to do the movie theater? In this,
The
You know what?
theater.
The answer is yes, but it's a little different.
Oh, cool.
No, I think that's cool. No, I mean, you got to do the movie theater, absolutely. I mean, that's what's fun about it for, I think, us is we get to go through the movie, and Chris and I go through it over and over and over again, and pick your favorite scenes that you get to bring to life, and that's certainly one of my favorite scenes.
That's the only thing in the movie that's different from the script I wrote in 1969. I mean, it's really almost word for word an 18-year-old's. That's why some of it's so weird. But the movie theater, when I had been in London on my way to Yugoslavia, and then actually, in 1975, I spent quite a while in London because I'm one of the 11 writers of The Spy Who Loved Me. But, so I was, and then I was there again on another job. And in London, we used to have what were called cartoon cinemas. And the Arrow Cinema, which is now, that was in Piccadilly Circus, it's now, if you go to Piccadilly Circus, they've changed it. One, it's no longer a circus, and two, the cinema was torn down, and it's now the Gap. But that theater was there for many years. There was one in Hyde Park Corner, one on Marble Arch. They were all over the place, 15 of them all over London. And they were little movie theaters that showed cartoons and newsreels and commercials. And what they were for is when people went shopping on what they call the high street, I mean, big shopping, it was to drop your kids off there. And I loved it because this was, I remember especially in 75, that they showed beautiful 35mm prints of Bugs Bunny, Tex Avery, Bob Clampett, just really good cartoons. And I remember the Brits I was working with thought I was nuts. But this is before home video, you really couldn't see that stuff. Anyway, so I wrote it, and it was supposed to be a cartoon cinema and a Roadrunner cartoon on the thing, and so with a couple of small children, when he says run away, it's supposed to be like a little girl. And when I came in 1981 back to London, most of them had closed, and the Arrow Cinema was now a porno theater.
As it shall be in the maze.
Okay, so we got to see you next Wednesday.
Cool. Another question?
Hi. First of all, I'd just like to say, I've been hooked up to this event since 2007, and you guys actually inspired me to become a designer at my college, so thank you guys for that. And,
awesome, thank you for supporting Halloween.
And my other question is, for this maze alone, how long did it take to just design the layout of the whole maze alone, just that?
We've been wanting to do this for a number of years. We started designing it in our heads, what, 3 years ago?
7 years ago, yeah, we did actually.
We talked about, Chris and I, usually what happens is opening night happens, Halloween Horror Nights, all the press comes, all the celebrities, we go through all that. And then sometime at the end of the night, like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, it's usually you and I on a hill somewhere in an obscure part of the Universal backlot going, it would be cool. next year we should do this. But
cool is ...
Yeah, and you and I started talking about American Werewolf a lot of years ago. It's always been on our wish list of films that we wanted to do. But how long did it take to do the drawing package, the physical layout, Chris?
Well, the physical layout itself, you guys know that, John and I will sit down and we'll pick essentially the rooms and what we want to show. Essentially, John will write a treatment, and I'll take that and break that down. So, it really kind of depends. After I broke it down, and I'm trying to do a layout in this case, it's in a 4,000 square foot tent, which I'm trying to create and take as much space of that tent up as I can. So really from pen to paper, it kind of varies. It might take sometimes, if I feel very inspired, much like this film, a few days to to maybe a week or so
Just to do the floor plan.
Just to get the floor plan, but then we'll elevate every single wall and draw all the details, which helps communicate all that construction and also scenery to the guys out in the field that are actually building construction, doing texture on the walls and everything. So that process where our set designers come in and we go through each and every elevation and such, and that takes about 2 to 2.5 to 3 weeks to really break down this maze and do that. And full color elevations as well. So we're communicating all the information clearly out in the field. So.
And there's something you said that I think for anybody here, I assume there's a lot of you that aspire to do this or want to create haunted attractions. Anybody? Yes?
Yeah.
Quite a few of you. Pen to paper. Did you hear what he said? Everything Chris does is drawn by hand. And I say that because a lot, in this day and age, a lot of people just assume that this is all done in a computer program. It's amazing when you look at all the elevations, and how many pages are in a drawing package? 50, 60?
Yeah, they're about that, with all the full color and everything. Yeah, it's about like that. Yeah.
It's all done by hand. It's all hand drawn.
I have to say that my only experience is, aside from just going to with one of these mazes, is this, in Orlando and here. And in Orlando, they're similar, but they're different. They're doing the different stuff. And what's interesting is in both cases, they presented to me, and it was like, this is fantastic, now change this. And what was good was that they really understood why I wanted them to change certain things, and they made it better. So it was a very good experience. I'll let you know how it is when I walk through.
That's the ideal, though, in any relationship that we have in Halloween Horror Nights when we get to work with the actual filmmaker, is we want that collaboration. I mean, this is the person who made the movie. Yes. So, of course, Chris and I want to sit down. I think we spent 5 hours the first time going through scene by scene in the maze and going back and forth and hearing your perspective on it and making all of those changes. And John sees and approves every single makeup sculpt, everything. We're constantly talking to each other. We're constantly sending things back and forth because when you're trying to recreate famous horror movies, that's what you want. That is the ideal of our event. And for us, that's the perfect relationship. So I think there's another panel coming in now. So I think we do have to wrap it up. I wanted to thank everybody for coming out today. We appreciate it. I want to thank Mr. Landis for coming out today. This guy made every seminal movie that I saw growing up. It's a huge honor for us to get to work with him. And Chris?
Yes, thank you for coming. We'll see you at Halloween Horror Nights.